Agriculture Department, and he went on his first assignment because they give you this card that says U.S. Ag Department, you know, kind of like a four-door sedan, you know, one of the normal government cars. You can picture it in your mind. He went to this first assignment, though, probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. Went out to this farm and got a hold of, of course, the old farmer that was farming the land was already out doing his chores, like farmers do. And he went up to the farmer and said, "Sir, I need to inspect your farm." And the farmer said, "Okay, but I need to tell you about this field. Don't go over into that field." And the young guy showed his ID card and said, Sir, do you see this ID card? I'm with the United States Department of Agriculture. That means that I can go anywhere at any time on your property when I need to inspect it." And so the farmer, being polite, just nodded his head. And so the farmer went back to doing his chores, and the inspector went out to inspect the land. And pretty soon, he heard some hollering from that area of the farm that he told him not to go to. And he looked out there, and he could see the young gentleman running as fast as he could, and his prize bull chasing him as fast as he could. And he could see that that bull was gaining on him. And he looked at the situation and assessed it and said to the young guy, he said, "Show him your card! Show him your card!" I don't know if it worked, but let's say our statements of truth. Oh, there we go. Let's say our statements of truth together, please.
I am a child of God. I am deserving of good in my life. I am accepting my good now.
You know, Kay, you're right. Today's daily word tied in so many ways. It ties in very much with this lesson today. The lesson is what is on your, what's it called exactly? What does your calendar look like? You know, anymore, well, for a long time, probably all of us have had a calendar that has our appointments on it. I know I do. I keep it in my phone. In fact, I don't have my phone on me because I take it off during service, but I have those reminders, you know, an hour ahead of time to beat me so I don't forget them and all that. Well, just take a second to imagine in your mind what your calendar looks like. What are these appointments really for? I mean, what they are for is for us to set aside a time that hopefully we can be interrupted as little as possible to take care of whatever the appointment's about, right? And that's what the appointment's for. But first, I want to tell you, before we go into those appointments and how we should take care of them, to tell you a story about a man that had a couple of appointments that were very important to him. They're the same day, and the first one he had these hour reminders, you know, to go to him. The first one, he was going to go to talk to somebody about a new job. It was an application that he had put in. But he was going to this job because he had all these skills. He was an experienced man, and he had all these skills that he wanted to share with this company. But the job was one that was higher than what he had ever applied for before. It was in management. And so he was thinking to himself, you know, over all these years that I've worked and I've gained all these skills, I know I can do that job that's open in management. But you know, over those years, I kind of badmouthed management off and on. And when I think about it, this is the guy, when I think about it, I really can't think of a solid idea or grounds why I badmouthed management. It just seemed like the thing to do. And so he went to this appointment, and the guy and him were in the same room, of course, and across from the desk, and the HR guy said, "You know, you seem real nervous, but you also have all of this wealth of knowledge about this position. You can do this position with your eyes closed." And he said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Well, why are you so nervous about this?" And he told him, he didn't say badmouth management, but he said, "You know, I've never had a management position before in my life, and I'm just nervous because I'm moving up from where I was in my company to this company." Well, the HR guy said, "Well, I know you can do the job. I know you'd be great fit for us, and we really need you. Would you take this much amount of money?" And the guy said yes, because he was just so happy about it. And so he went to lunch, and then later that day, he had another appointment set up, and this appointment, he didn't really need the reminder either, but he had an appointment with his daughter. And he loved his daughter very much, of course. And his daughter had just graduated college and started a new job herself. They lived in the same town, but it was, like regrettably a lot of us do. We maybe live near our loved ones, but we don't get together too often. So they had set this appointment up. Well, right after that 1 hour reminder went off on his phone, even though he hadn't forgot, he had a phone call from his daughter. And she said, "Dad, I've got this great new job and I'm enjoying it, but this assignment that they put me on is really taking a lot of my time, and I don't think I have time to break away and meet you today." And he understood. He wasn't happy about it, but he understood. He said, "Well, let's set up an appointment later. We'll get together and set up an appointment." Well, let me ask you a couple of questions right here. Which appointment, and just think about these answers in your mind. Which appointment, I keep pushing the wrong button, sorry. Which appointment was more important? Which appointment was more important to the man? And how did the appointments turn out? A few weeks passed, and the man and his daughter had a new appointment set up. And the man was getting settled in his new job. He enjoyed the job tremendously. And he began to like the idea that he was a part of management now. Like many jobs, though, that we've all been on, I hope, well, it doesn't make a difference whether you have or not, but a lot of jobs nowadays have these pay scales. They show you well, if you're in this group, this A1 or whatever, you get, this is the range you have in this area, and if you move to A2, you get this range of pay scale. Well, upon finding that out, this company that he worked for now in management, he found out that he was on the lower end of that range. And he was thinking, if this is the range for what I do, I know all this stuff. What's up with that? So he had already befriended some people, so he asked his colleagues, he said, "What's up with this? I'm on the lower end of this pay range, and I'm doing just as much as anybody else in that pay range. Why am I on the lower end?" And the guy said, that had been with the company a long time, said, "Well, that's HR's job. They'll sit there and assess you in the interview process, and they'll try to hire you at the money they think they can get you at, but as low as they have to pay you to save the company money." And so he thought about that for a minute, and it didn't sit too well with him. He wasn't too happy about it. Well, later that day, he had this appointment set with his daughter still, again. And finally, he got to see her. Well, as they got together, she started telling him what was going on in her life. And that's what he wanted to hear about, but he was so stuck on what had just happened at his job that he had to stop her and interrupt her and say, I got to tell you what's going on in my job, what's happening here. So he did that, and by the time he had done that, and she was supportive and everything, but by the time he had done that, the time that they had together was over. It was done. But time is a funny thing, isn't it? Timing is even a funnier thing. So I have to ask you, do you think that if the man met with his daughter before he found out he was getting paid less, would that meeting have been different?
Yes.
Would it have been more substantive to him and probably her? And do you think if the man would have had the same attitude of joy and eager anticipation that he had after he had gotten the job, before he found out about the money being paid less, that he would have gone into that interview with? If he would have gone with that attitude, do you think that he would have been hired at a higher rate? We don't know, but could have made a difference. But time and timing is only relevant in this part of life. In fact, if we are not careful, many of us, I know I have in my life, can become a slave to time. We can have our calendar filled with so many appointments that all we are doing is running from one appointment to the next. never actually taking time to digest and interpret what happened in that appointment. What it was all about, and how it affects us and what we are trying to accomplish. Everybody is, or nobody is immune to this. When the CEO that's been at Unity Village came on, this was in, I don't know, it's been quite a few years now. I was working there. We had appointments, all management had appointment after appointment after appointment. Because she wanted to get some things done. But she found out, it probably took, I don't know, 3 months. She found out, and I found out, because I really had never been in that position before either, as far as having that many appointments, that we weren't getting anything done, except appointments. I mean, these meetings that we were having together, they were all, you know, there was good ideas that came from the meetings, but we never had time to implement them, because we were going to the next meeting. It was silly. It really was. You know, I was fortunate. I would get there earlier than anybody else at the village because we had a department that started earlier. And so I was able to implement some of those with my group, my morning meeting group with my people. But we can become a slave to time, and we don't have to be. But we have to know, in order not to become a slave to time, we have to know that it's relevant only in the manifest world, in sense consciousness. Because what underlies, and I've told you this many times before, and I do want an answer, what underlies everything in the manifest world? The spiritual laws, right? I don't care what you say, just say spiritual. Let me hear you say spiritual. Spiritual. Thank you. Spiritual underlies everything physical, right? That's an easy one, right? Right?
Yes.
Thank you. When we think of how we are reacting or responding in life, we have to look at what we are reacting or responding to. Are we reacting or responding to something out here? We could be. A lot of times we are. But what happens when we are reacting or responding to something out here? Something in here makes us feel the need to react or respond, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, we were at this conference this last weekend, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, I hope it wasn't one of my group, or I'm going to stick my foot in it. Somebody was asking me, is that normal, Diane? Someone was asking me, you know, how they should have reacted or responded to someone in a certain situation. And I said the first thing, even though I think that we should all know this by now, is the first thing that we have to do before we react or respond is see what's going on with us inside. Why we feel the need to react or respond. Because we have to be coming from that spiritual law in order to change anything in the manifest world for the good, for permanency. All the rules of the manifest world, which time is one of, are rules that we have put into place from our spiritual awareness. We have manifested this idea of time to help us in many ways. Yet, as with many things, if we focus too much on it because it's a sense consciousness idea, then it can take over our life, and we don't direct it anymore. But who sets our appointments? Yeah, we do. We set our appointments. You still have the authority. You still have domain over all the appointments that are set in your life. Now, does that mean that I never have to go to an appointment when my boss sets one for me? No, that doesn't mean that. That means that we go to that with an attitude of knowing that we're going to learn something, to grow from that appointment. The spiritual laws that you learn supersede all manifestations in this world, because all manifestations in this world were created through a spiritual law. You know, I use the idea of the fourth dimension because physically we're in manifesting things, we're in the third dimension, so I use the idea of the fourth dimension, which houses more spiritual laws than we can see in the physical necessarily. And I say that lightly because when we are coming from more of our spiritual awareness, we can see a lot more of the spiritual laws here too. But if we don't come from that fourth dimension on our reactions to here, then we are not bringing that absolute, that spirituality into here. You know, the old saying of, sometimes you have to respond to a problem at the level of the problem. Not necessarily true. You may have to respond to the problem at the level as far as being in the same place, but you never have to respond. You never have to respond to anger with anger, do you?
No.
And as long as you do that, what's going to happen? Anger is going to perpetuate, isn't it? So we don't have to do that. Time is in sense consciousness. And as long as we stay in sense consciousness, we can be subject to being a prisoner of time. So we have to think of how we're thinking in this arena. Because when we are aware of the spiritual truth of time being unlimited, we will know that we are always with that someone. Okay, that you don't understand it, because I haven't got it. Sorry. I'm trying to get used to doing this myself. I told you about my aunt that just made her transition. And I am doing very good, I think. I had some tears last night because I found out about it then. But you know, when you're close to someone, I think you can tell this more when you're real close to someone than you can otherwise, but it applies to every relationship we have, even those that we don't have with other people, as far as, you know, people on the other side of the world. We may not think we don't have a relationship with them, but we do. But when you're close to someone, when you love someone, I think everybody has experienced at some point, after they make their transition, a time when you feel like they're in the room with you, or they're with you physically. You feel that, but that isn't accurate, is it? They aren't physically with you at that time, not in the third dimension. They are with you,
Yes.
just not in the physical. But they're with you the same way they have been with you all along anyway. Spiritual law, spiritual truth is something that happens no matter what we do in life. There are facts that happen in life that may be true. But even though something is true, it may not be the truth. You see what I'm saying? Even though something is true. Okay, let me give you an example. We had that shooting in Chattanooga. The guy did some things that were not from his Christ consciousness, I think we'll all agree, right? But does that mean that he doesn't have the Christ within him? No. The facts show one thing, which is true. He shot those people. But the truth is that we're still one. I know that's hard to see sometimes, and we don't always like to hear that, especially if it's something raw. You know, we don't always like to hear that. But the truth is that he's still as much a spiritual being as I am. He may not be experiencing it or expressing it as much right now. So, when we are aware of the spiritual truth of time being unlimited, we will know we are always with each other, whether that is in physical or not. Because when we're missing somebody from the physical sense, we're missing them from our small m mind. And all of y'all that have had classes know the difference between small m, which is the human mind, and the big M mind, which is divine mind, your connection with divine mind. But from divine mind, from the big M mind, the capital M mind, you are always together. We came to this existence from a spiritual law that always manifests, that always says yes, from an energy that is always available. When we're done with this existence, when we shed this body, we're going to go back to that full energy, that unlimited energy. And you know, I think that everybody in here has heard these studies before, but that's been scientifically proven. If you don't believe me, look it up if you don't believe me. Many times when somebody has made their transition, what a lot of people call die, look at what happens if they have an energy gauge in that room. They've done studies on this a lot, and it's never failed. When someone makes their transition back to full spirit, the energy rises in the room. How does that happen? Well, it's kind of common sense if we think about it. The energy, you know, we've got unlimited energy. But the energy, there is some of our energy that is housed in this body. When this body expires, that energy is free to flow anywhere. And it does. But if you've got one room, like any room, and someone makes that transition and releases all that energy, of course the energy in the room is going to go up. Right? There are many studies on that. In the spiritual realm, our energy is not confined to a body. So we know that to be true, even through science. But when we were created, we were never intended to be limited by our body. And that's what we've forgotten. Christianity is very guilty of this. A lot of new religions are very guilty of this, saying that Jesus was the only begotten Son of God. He's the only incarnate. You know, Christianity says He's incarnate God. Well, so are you. But if we don't agree, if we don't understand that, then where's that energy coming from? If we say that Jesus is the only one, then Jesus has all the power, not us. And we're succumbing, just like it is, if we were succumbing to all those appointments, we are becoming a slave to an idea that is not true. Or it may be true for some people, but it's not the truth. I hope I'm making sense this morning.
We got it.
I know you do. Y'all are good. Y'all are good. You know, sometimes we get, you know, I talk about money too. Sometimes we get enslaved to money. We do sometimes. We think like that prosperity lesson that Kay read from the Daily Word. We think that prosperity, when we're thinking in the manifest realm, has to do with our house or car, whatever it is in the manifest realm. That's only a part of prosperity. But if we think about it as only in the manifest realm, then that's all we're going to be able to accomplish, and that is limiting us, and that is putting our energy in a shell and holding it in. We don't have to do that. When we let go of that energy, when we're not tied to just money, when we're not tied to just that house, that car, then we are going to get an abundance of everything. It's going to come to us in unexpected ways. And you know, like our sayings at the first, I am a child of God. I deserve good in my life. I accept my good now. Do you accept your good now?
Yes.
We have to open up and accept our good. You know, we had a good, when we were taking an offering yesterday, David, a fellow minister, David, I'm forgetting his last name, it doesn't make a difference.
Treasure.
Yes,
Yeah.
Treasurer of Umos. He got up and was saying, which is totally true. You know, if you want to receive, when we have our meet and greet, if you want to receive more hugs, what do you got to do? Give more hugs. If you want to have more relationships, what do you got to do? You got to be open to the relationships. And it's the same with anything, financial or anything. I'm not saying that because I want you to give more money, although that'd be nice. I'm just saying, though, as we give, we receive. That's not because it's from the Bible, that's just a spiritual truth. And spiritual laws are underneath all physical laws. You cannot do anything in the physical, or you cannot do anything spiritually without it manifesting in the physical. Today's lesson, I wanted to use this Bible quote, Psalms 111:7. And it says, "The works of His hands are true and just. Steadfast are all His appointments." We can make all of the appointments that we have in our life meaningful. And we have to do that. In order to do that, we have to come from a spiritual awareness, a spiritual consciousness. So no matter what appointment that we have on our calendar, whether it's scheduled or unscheduled, we get to name it. You know, some people might ask me, why is that important that we name our appointments, Warren? Because you guys know the three phases of consciousness. Consciousness, subconsciousness, and superconsciousness. The three phases of consciousness that Fillmore talked about. The superconsciousness is a divine mind, but we're totally coming from our Christ center. Subconsciousness is everything that's happened in our life, that we put things in there and we've named things. So it's kind of like a recording that, you know, we refer to a lot. Our consciousness is what we're aware of right now. But our subconsciousness can affect our awareness, our consciousness. Because sometimes when something happens and it's similar to something that's happened to us before, our subconsciousness will sneak in there and say, oh, I know the ending of this. Let me tell you what's going to happen. And we go with that. But we have to be careful. Because we're not letting things unfold. There could be a bigger blessing for us there if we let it unfold and stay in this awareness right here, right now. So we can't stop and let, you know, the appointments. You know, and I'm guilty of this. When at Unity, when we had all those appointments, I got kind of tired of it, and I thought, oh gosh, here's another appointment. Well, what kind of attitude is that going to get me? What kind of result from that appointment is that going to get me? It's going to get me, oh, there's another appointment. And it did sometimes. We have to be careful. And I've talked about what is true about a situation may not be the truth. So as we go forth this day, and we go forth with our lives from this moment on, I'm asking that each of us be mindful of all our appointments. Be mindful of the time that we're setting aside for something and why we're setting that aside. Know that when the attitude that we take to an appointment is important. And it can shape or change how we label that appointment, how it is, what happens in that appointment. Know that you control all those things that are going to happen in that appointment. That you control how you are going to be in that appointment. And if you go into an appointment knowing that no one or nothing can take your good from you, then no one or nothing will take any good from you. Because that is the truth. God bless you.